sends the message that other communities exist solely so that our children can learn from them or can benefit from them. And I think that that's a tricky and slippery slope. So these were kind of the things that were happening at the school when I got there. So we'll talk a little bit about the Meadowbrook Vacation Program. So it's our first kind of entree into public purpose work at Meadowbrook. And so it came from an idea of mine, which was when I was in elementary school, we would have vacation breaks. I'm the only child. And my mother was always trying to think of ways to have me be enriched during that break. You know, the first couple of days of a break are fun, like you're like, yay, you know, I'm sleeping. And then my day 3 as an only child, you're like, all right, what are we going to do? And my mother was in a tough place because she wasn't wealthy enough to afford a lot of the opportunities, but we didn't qualify for subsidies or discounts for a lot of things. So she was in this place where it was going to be a huge sacrifice, but not enough to get things discounted. And so I thought, okay, what if we offered a relatively low cost and academically enriching opportunity for students in the Boston metro area to have a camp experience at our school? And so this seems kind of simple, but it was a novel idea because at our school we really didn't have a culture of inviting people to do things unless they were kind of like specifically admission related. So we had open house and things, but we didn't have a lot of just community events. So there was a lot of pitching about this. And like I said before, I really wanted people to have access to resources, not because I thought, you know, not out of pity, but because I thought, you know, like I said, I think there are great scientists and mathematicians and artists who just go to schools that aren't resourced that way. And that's not only low-performing schools. In Massachusetts, there are really high-performing schools that have cut back on those kinds of programs. And something that's distinct about our program is I really, really want it to be racially, socioeconomically, and geographically diverse. A lot of similarly situated programs, and I think programs that I want to do in the future, may look different, but I really wanted this program to be kind of a nexus of experience. I wanted kids from Weston, kids from Wayland, kind of some wealthier suburbs to be alongside in a way that felt equal. So I didn't want it to be, this is mostly a program for Weston with a couple of kids from Boston. I really wanted it to be diverse that way. And the important thing was that it was going to be led by our faculty. So they had to give time. And the way that that worked is our 8th graders go to Costa Rica during the February break, and so many teachers had an extra prep because some of the students that they were teaching were no longer there. So this is this year's cohort of MVPers. They usually come kind of looking pitifully on the first day because they are on break and they are not sure why their parents have them in school. This is on the last day, and this is how they generally leave us. So this was our 2nd year. We have a capacity at 15 students. I'd love to see that grow. But what I really realized for me was I had kind of an ideal, and I recognized that I had to work within, I think I had to start smaller than I wanted to start. And I had to be okay with the fact that that was how it was going to be. Right now, as I said, we're staffed by Meadowbrook faculty volunteers. And we tried to make the day as enriching and engaging as we could. So we thought about things that a lot of schools don't offer, which are languages and art and music, etc.
How long?
So we're 3 days. So the February vacation for public school is 5 days. This is one of the concessions. So of course I was like, I want it to be 5 days. You know, I don't want parents to have to think about what they're going to do for the other 2 days. And then someone said, well, it's going to be a much harder sell to get faculty volunteers on days where school isn't already open. So that was concession number 1. So we are open for 3 days of the 5-day break, so MVP is 3 days long.
Okay.
And we go from 8 to 3. So there are a couple of limitations. Number 1, for a lot of working families, 8 to 3 is hard. And we're not in a position yet to offer after-school options. So that's self-selecting a group that can get their child at 3 o'clock. Currently there's no budget. I don't have a budget. That's a big thing, right? So currently there's no budget, which is why going back and forth, I said, okay, this would be great if it were free tuition or cheaper tuition. So it's $150 for 3 days, and that was compared to, I did some research at comparable lower income costs. So that was the Y, the Boys and Girls Club, and it's actually competitive with those, but it's still more expensive than I'd like it to be. I know that I'm losing families who look at the flyer and say, even though we say scholarships are available, and we actually have a sliding scale, so I would say half of the families are paying full price, half of the families are paying less than $50. I know that some people look at that and say, I can't afford that. I'm also not paying faculty, so this year I was able to give them like gift cards, but they are not stipended. And that's something that I've been, as a head, I've been in conversations with the head saying, yes, it is their prep time, but still it's their time. Transportation options are limited, so we're working on how to get more students there, but it's still challenging. This is a big one. Not everyone sees the value in doing this unless I can tie the data to admissions, right? So, I know, it's all right. So it happens, of course, as you were saying, when you have a program like this, right? A program that's fun on a beautiful campus, you will naturally have people who want to know more about the school. But to me, although that was something that, in terms of brand recognition, I shared, in terms to get the program off of the ground, to me, it's not a goal, right? Even if every student applied, we can't take them anyway. So to me, it's more about doing a program that benefits students and benefits our school, and it's not about recruiting students. No, please.
So I'm like I said, I was 18 years a public school person.
Yeah.
So I think that attitude, with no critique of anyone for whom or with whom you work, compromises the idea of the partnership.
It does. It does.
The fact that there is sort of this like this, I'm gonna like sneak this into a recruiting event, I think compromises the way that you described it, which is, how did you say it? You said it so well. Each party leaves with something. Each interaction leaves each party with dignity, and I think that's compromising to the dignity of the families that arrive.
It is.
So.
It is. So, and this is,
you work for at the head of school.
No, and this is the thing, right? So, first of all, this is what I talk, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think best practices are. And at the top of the list, is transparency, right? So this is why placement programs work, because everyone's clear that it's a placement program, right? And so you're entering in with that knowledge, and like I said, some people are fine with the placement program, right? But I think what's really important, like I said, is everyone being clear what we're doing, right? And so for me, and based on the mission of the program, and for the faculty, we are not thinking about it, like the mission of MVP is not to be a placement program. But I still think that there are mixed feelings about, well, why are people giving up time and space if it's not about that?
Yeah, in the reporting that I've done, that seems to be the biggest obstacle, right? Well, it's not tied to admissions and why are we dealing it?
Right.
But then there's also this thinking on the other side, on the public school side, well, we don't want to send our kids to you because you're going to steal them.
Right.
Our best and brightest.
Right.
If that happens to a minority, you don't want them on the more.
Right.
Because, and that's a really hard thing to overcome. And I think that's the one thing that sticks out, at least from what I've experienced and whom I've spoken with, it seems to be the biggest obstacle moving forward.
Yeah. And I think that's where the culture piece really comes in, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about the deep dive into the mission. So before I got to Meadowbrook, I worked at a Quaker school in Philadelphia. Quakers are very clear about what their missions are.
Yeah.
There's that of God in everyone, and so there's a level of dignity and not even service, but good work we need to be doing together. And that is a clear mission that if I were still in that school, it would be very clear to everyone why we're doing this. Community partnership, community outreach was really at the heart of the school. It was not uncommon on weekends, on evenings to see either other community organizations using the space at no cost just because it was seen as a community space. If we had speakers thinking about professional development for parents or teachers, you would see public school teachers coming in and it was just a different culture. And that's why I think the culture piece matters, because the kinds of justifications, and again, this is no judgment on the institution at all, because I think this is something that's similar to institutions across the board about what the culture of the school is and what the mission of the school is and how you can clearly connect a project or an idea to the mission to get buy-in. Because what's really important to me is that this program or any other programs that come into play are not seen as my agenda, but seen as institutionalized, that we are committed to doing this work, so that in the absence of me or anyone else, the work continues. That's really important to me.
Just have a question. Do you have high school students there?
No, we ended 8th.
You had an 8th grade? Okay. So are there, just wondering about older students working with the kids and teachers to take the burden of their vacation time that
Yeah.
they had like volunteer.
Yeah, so that's my thinking in cycle like 5, right?
Okay,
Because
yeah.
cycle 2, I'm just trying to get us to a place of, hey, opening our school environment in this, to me, small way is gonna be okay. Like our students, there's not a huge cost to our students, right? They're still functioning in their day as usual. It's not a huge burden to our faculty who have all written me notes to thank me for the opportunity to engage in this work, right? But I still think that for our institution, because there hasn't been a long-standing culture, I think people are always trying to weigh the costs against the benefits, right?
Yeah.
So if there is a cost, which there is, right, in terms of, again, time and space, what are the benefits? Does that make sense?
You're a good functioning member of society as an
Right.
institution.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I want to get to the last point, this is also a limitation. So because of who I am and where I'm from, I don't feel, until we're all on the same page about what this program is, I don't feel comfortable going into schools and saying, it's not this, right? I don't think that that's fair. I think I need the entire institution to be behind me on the fact that it's not meant to be a placement program before I can go to schools and say, please send us your students because it's just a great enrichment opportunity. That doesn't feel honest to me, and so I haven't done that. What I have done is work with community organizations that are just happy to place students somewhere during a break. But what I would love to get to a place is to be able to walk into any school and say, hey, Olivia, remember me from last year? Great, we had 10 of your kids, they had a really great time, we'd love to see 10 more. And for whomever to say, oh great, I know that these 10 students don't have anything to do with this break, you know, are you able to fund them? Yes, great. And everyone understands that it's just about the experience for kids and it's not this backhanded blow to get them to Meadowbrook. But I think I need more clarity on that before I feel comfortable about doing that. But I would love to see that kind of buy-in and support from community leaders to say that, like, we trust the Meadowbrook School. We know what they're about and we know what this program's about, and it's been a great opportunity for our students, and so we want to work with them.
Have you, I'm just curious, have you reached out to the super?
We have, so we were able to get support from Wayland schools, so they disseminated the information. And we missed the deadlines for some towns, but some towns won't, and that's not as, some of it is like they for equity purposes, they just don't
Yeah.
publish anything. And in the future, as I think about the future goals, I'd love for half of the staff of MVP to be from the community, so to be from public schools and other organizations. I think that that would be a really powerful thing to happen. Again, clarity about admissions. I'd love to see real interaction between our students and the MVPers in a way that feels meaningful and fair and free of kind of power dynamics. I don't want it to be like, oh, we're gonna come tutor these kids because they need us. Like, I want it to be something that feels interactive and equal. I would love it to build that bridge between our school and the community. And I would love to have cultural competency training for any teacher who's involved, just to have a sense of how to work with students who are different. This is great. So one of the things I'd love you to think about, and this is a conversation I actually had to have with my head of school, is to think about your own school's mission. And is there a particular line or phrase in your mission that connects to the idea of public purpose? Again, when I worked at a Quaker school, it was all over the place, so we didn't have to talk about it. I felt like that deep dive was a little bit different.
It's just interesting because I was making some notes we were talking. I think that what you're mentioning is that there's not enough alignment such that a mission is fractal. And so what does the pedagogy of your mission look like?
Right.
What does the service of your mission look like? And so I'm wondering, from whom does the mandate come? So I pushed my board to say that if we're going to be an anti-bias, anti-racist institution, it is not enough that I say it. Because I will leave eventually, but there will always be a board of trustees. So how does the board, it's like you said, like you might leave, so we don't want it to go with you.
Right.
And I think that is such an interesting conversation to push the board on that. They engage in the social justice work before the faculty does. I put them through the same experience. Because that mandate has to come from the highest, I think, from the, it's just me, like that I know, the highest authorizing body.
Right.
And so I think that whatever that is, that particular line, we should try to help trace it throughout the system.
Right,
So I don't know if that is a helpful response or not, because I was just thinking something else.
that's fine.
Do you have a parents association?
We do.
And how, I think that the parents who are sending their kids there, they're ultimately writing the checks, right?
Yeah.
And what do they want for their kids? Because if you're fighting against a culture that the parents don't want this, but I doubt that that's the case, I would think that the parents would want, like, as many authentic, like, I think the parents hold a lot of, what do I want to say?
Yeah.
Like, so if you talk to the parents association,
Yeah, so here's the thing. I think the parents and the school, I think they want what the program wants, but they haven't thought about it that way. Does that make sense? So I think, here's an example of what I mean. I think that what helped was to see that this could happen in real time. I think we've been intellectualizing this conversation for a long time. So parents who send their children to Meadowbrook say, you know, I want my child to be a leader. I want my child to know how to engage with people who are different. Like, this is what people are sending their children to our school for, and this is what, in part, what we are promising. And we have really great intellectually based conversations about that, right? But we haven't played it out in real time. And so part of the work that I was trying, so I don't think there would be pushback. If in connecting this program to that mission, there won't be pushback. But I think when people were envisioning what that looked like, they weren't necessarily thinking about having their school function as a community space. Does that make sense? So if I say to people, okay, well, you've said you want your child to be a leader, you want your child to engage in difference. How outside of an intellectual space has your child been able to do that at our school, right? I think people would say, oh, like, I hadn't thought about it that way. So I don't think I would get pushback in terms of that piece of it, but I think people hadn't envisioned it looking like that before. Does that make sense?
yeah. So, I mean, I think that your parents could be a good ally for you,
Right.
because I think most parents want their kids to have these, it's kind of a struggle when you decide where to send your kids to school, like, I don't want them to be in this little bubble,
Right.
but I want them to have good opportunities, so.
No, and I think, yeah, I hope I'm not making it sound worse than it is, because I think that there are parents that are certainly have been really, for lack of a better word, impressed by the kind of work that's happened. I think that people, again, I'm gonna keep saying, I don't think people had thought about this being a way.
Right.
And so I think that there's been good energy, and that's why I'm glad that in some ways it's nice to walk into a space where the culture is already there and then build on the culture. But in some ways I think it's creating a culture because they're like, oh, so we had students who don't go to Meadowbrook, right? And whether that's seasoned biases of different kinds, right? There was an assumption that the school was gonna blow up because we have children here who don't attend our school regularly, right? And I think having 2 years of a process of seeing that, no, actually, they're coming and they're engaging and our faculty is enjoying it and they're adding more to the school community. I think that doing the reverse would have taken forever.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right,
Like, I
yes.
think waiting to build a culture, or waiting for people to think of that first would have taken longer than having an environment where it happened and it was okay.
Actually, I did a study once looking at different schools' mission statements, private schools, and the most common word in all mission statements, you guys want to guess what it is? Single word. No.
Leadership.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Leadership, which I can't stand that word, leader. Nothing, what's wrong with following? Anyway, it's a different scenario, but I think this is a really important question that you.
It's another session.
If everyone's a leader, who's following? We can discuss it over lunch. But in any case, this wasn't cognizant in my mind, but I'm thinking, public purpose, public service. I can't recall any school that had that in their overall mission statement. But I think that's a great question to ask, because your mission statement is your identity. And if public purpose is something that a school feels so passionate about, but it's absent from their mission statement, I think that's cool. You know? on all, even up to the trustees level. Yeah.
So hard for them though.
Is it?
Well, because they're not, well,
Well, I
is there-
think,
no, yeah.
I think because I think they wanted a strong head who would push them, but I don't think they thought I would like come out of the gate, like, we don't have time. Like, you know, like, so I was hired, I started, and then a month and 8 days later, my friend was shot and laying in the street for 4 hours.
Oh
And
my
so suddenly,
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
so like, we don't have time anymore, let's get going. And so I think those are things that I push against. Like, I think even the word diversity I mentioned for a second,
Mhm.
we are diverse, and it's a bunch of, you know, it's this whiteboard counting all of the black children. I'm like, that's white, that's racist. It's inclusive that we want to be, but then they're like, yes, we do, and I'm like, well, how are you as a board gonna figure out how you're gonna be inclusive?
Yeah.
Because just so you know, we're all sitting as white people in one white circle.
Right. No, it's
So
true.
It's challenging, and so another thing I thought about, like this idea of cultural competency, I think is also, it feels disrespectful in terms of when I think about white folks engaging in justice work. So talk a lot, I don't remember who I read, so it's not original to me, but how are we culturally humble?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and it's not me, and I forget her name,
Yeah.
she's a smart woman who wrote this great article on cultural humility. I don't even know if I could put my hands on it, but that's what I took from it. So I think that part of like, we should have pride in our mission and pride in who we are and pride in who is here, and yet we should be humble enough to know that we exist in a bigger space, particularly when you talk about, you know, having heart for the education of all children, which
Right.
in St. Louis is just miserable. It is heartbreaking.
Hmm.
There were 2 schools that were unaccredited by the states, and there were actual parent associations in like uproars about receiving these children into their schools.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was like, it was embarrassing.
That happened in New York, I think. I don't remember what the exact situation was, but I think there was one school that was overcrowded, lower resource, and there was a wealthy school that had more space, and they were all in the same district, and they were trying to come, and I mean, people were, it just demonstrates like the worst of what we can be. But I wanted to talk a little bit, we don't have a lot of time, so I just wanted to talk about some tips that I found to be beneficial in terms of building those kinds of external relationships. So people are always saying, you know, just go out there and make a relationship, just go do it, without having a real sense of what that means. So things that have helped me. Whenever possible, I try to minimize perceived or real power dynamics, right? And that's something that seems really basic, but generally if I were trying to work with a school, if I had an idea, first of all, I would call, I would introduce myself. I would say, I'd love to, you know, I'm new to the area, I'm new to the school, I just want to learn more about what you're doing. I would offer to go to them. These things seem really basic, but I think they're so helpful. Generally, if I had a clicker, I'd be sitting where you guys are and not sitting up here. I think those things are all really important. I think identity matters. People try to think that it does not. It certainly does. Who I am, what I look like, how I'm perceived, what's true about me, all those things are being played out in real time when I go into a new space. And people want to know, who are you? What qualifies you to be here? What do you want? How can I trust you? Will I see you again? Right? And I think the what do you want question is really big, right? And that's why figuring out with my school, right? So I know what I think the mission of the program is, but we've got to figure this out because the what do you want, I want that answer to be authentic and genuine. Demonstrate a willingness to be flexible. So I think a lot of places go in and they say, well, our 4th period starts at 2025, so we need you to be here and doing this thing. And it's actually like, no, tell me about how your day works. Tell me about the resources that you have. How would this be easier for you? Should we be at a mutual location? Do you have access to transportation? Just what works. And not trying to build it around what you think is best for your kids and how they learn and what they need to know, right? Because I always, I don't have time, right? So a lot of teachers are always like, well, our kids need to learn about, you know, hunger and homelessness. And I'm like, that's great. There's a real organization doing real work who's not built to teach our kids about hunger and homelessness. The time that they're going to take to prepare for our kids to get here and do, you know, half an hour of well-intentioned but not great work, let's be honest about what our 3rd graders might be doing, is taking 2 to 3 hours out of their day, right? And these are places that aren't always very well resourced. So it's great, and it's great that they're willing to help us have this experience, but at what cost? And how are we going to make sure that they get something out of it too? Establish trust. Share, you know, some people just, you know, I don't know if it might be a little bit of independent school culture, Western culture. Like, I know what I want, so I'm just going to come in, it's going to be a business meeting, I'm going to tell you about what we want and done. And the person has no idea who you are, why this work is important to you, what you've experienced, what you know about their space, what you don't know. So thinking about the humility piece, right? I think we always go in, at best, having done research, and say, oh, well, you definitely need this thing, right? Like, no. So being willing to share something of yourself, and then being humble about the things you think you know, and the things you might need to know more about to really engage meaningfully. So we've talked a lot about this, right? Establishing that it's really mutual, like that we are very clear about what we all want and need, and that we can really offer that, right? And not what we think the person needs or what we want to give, but what they actually need. The transparency piece is really important. What does our school want? What can we do? What are our limitations? And seek to build true relationships based on the shared vision, right? So it's like we all have a vision for our children in, Missouri or Boston, right? What is it? Like sometimes we focus a lot on what's different, but what do we all want? And I think when you get to the heart of that, when people really feel like you really care about their children in their communities, and I say their children because I know what it's like to work on the other side of the desk and feel really protective of the children that I work with, right? Because there are always people coming in and offering things and wanting to work, and then when it gets hard, they disappear, and there are kids waiting for people who are never going to show up again. And in some communities that happens more often than not. So there is a certain protective layer of people saying, all right, this sounds good, but like, how can I trust you? How can I trust that you're going to care for the kids that don't always get the resources that your kids get? And I think sometimes, I know I work with people in independent schools who get turned off by that. They're like, oh, why is that person so hard to connect with? And I'm like, well, what have you done to show them that you can be trusted, And I think consistency is a big piece of that. So any project that I do that engages the outside community, I make sure that we are going. Like, we don't feel like it today, we are going, because that is how we show that we are who we say we are, and that this work is important to us. So I'm sorry, third period's getting, we're going. And being consistent with that over time, even if there's turnover with people. So I think sometimes the partnerships are hard because you build this great rapport with someone, and then they move on, and then you've got to start again. But being consistent so that they can say, oh, whatever school, they've been doing this for 8 years. They come when they say they're going to come, their kids are knowledgeable, they work well with us, and they allow us to say no. They don't pressure us into doing things that don't make sense for our organization. So those are some things that I've found to be really helpful. Are there any other thoughts or questions or?
All I do is, I just had this thought, because, we're all sitting here talking about this, but why, and it's just, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I worked in an inner city school before 1 year, and I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. And I wouldn't send my kids there, it was not something, I learned a lot from it, but I was out of there. I went to a rural school after that, and I felt like when I left, that the kids weren't I failed, but I just couldn't hack it. I could not do it. It was just too much for me. And I think so now my kids are here, right? But, we've moved around all over the place. But I'm so you say these parents didn't want these kids in their school, and we're all teaching or sending our kids to independent schools. Why aren't you there? Why aren't we in those schools working? Why aren't your kids in these schools? Why are you? I'm just to answer that question, to be able to connect with these other schools, I think you really need to know and be honest with yourself. Why aren't you there? I don't know if this makes any sense at all, but why?
Sure.
It's easy to judge, these parents, but look where we're all teaching. We want the beautiful campus. We want the, So what can you, I think you have to be honest with yourself, and even see some things that maybe you don't like about yourself to be able to connect.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I think what you say has a lot of validity to it, but one reason why I would teach at a public school is I want to be held accountable to state standards.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing for me.
Okay.
Newton has some of the best public schools in in the country, I hear say.
Okay,
But the biggest reason why I don't is because that's the same reason I don't like AP either. I don't want to be held accountable by some
Okay.
external body,
right,
whether college board or state.
okay,
But I hear what you're saying, you know, you could be making a difference in the heart of it, right?
Right.
Rather than with more affluent students.
uh-huh,
But it depends on what private school you go to. A lot of private schools have a big endowment and they give a lot of money for scholarships, right? And they're really serious about diversity and trying to include different perspectives and different people on different campuses. So I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, not all private schools are the same, just like not all public schools are the same.
right, oh
And-
yeah,
and-
no, I'm
yeah,
just saying,
yeah,
like,
you're right, I
like,
hear you.
like
Yeah.
when you're going out to connect with these members,
Yeah,
like, I feel like these other schools,
Yeah.
you're going to these schools that
yeah.
you, well, I don't know about you
Yeah,
personally,
I
but
don't know.
like, me, like, I'm going to the schools where I don't wanna teach at,
Yeah,
but I'm trying to like, I just feel like for it to be a true, like the transparency, like, what do you really, I don't know.
I think that's an interesting dilemma to be in.
Yeah.
So I only went to Crossroads because it was similar demographic to the public school that I was at. And it is in the city of St. Louis. And half of our students receive tuition assistance, 40% are children of color. And 10 of those students, or 220 students, 10 of those students come from families whose income is below the poverty line. And so I can point to the public, St. Louis public schools down the road that I have students from. So in some ways, we are urban in that way.
Right,
And yet, so what helps with the connection as a white man walking into those
Yeah,
schools
that's what I'm
is
not.
to name my whiteness, is to
Okay.
name it, to
Uh-huh.
name that I don't have that school, but I have the students who are from that area, so that I am, on behalf of that area where my students are living, it becomes a way of advocating for them not only in the school space, and we're an upcycled grocery store, so we have beautiful floors, and then beyond that, we're an old building, we have terrazzo floors, because we're an old,
Okay,
old. And so it helps to say that part of this is on behalf of the neighborhoods where my students come from. So
Okay.
when I talk about the 16 students who live in Ferguson, it's helpful to have the demographic that I do, to name that I have a sense of my identity, which was so helpful, to be out and queer, to be out, all of these things, to just name it on the table and then say, but I want my students to go home to a safe place too. And so
Right.
whether we're all in the same school or not, we have to be in one another's spaces. And so I often go to their space and they invite them into ours. And
okay.
that's sort of how I do it. But I when I left public school, I had parents very angry because they thought I was just taking the money and running, and they didn't understand the school that I went to. Is that helpful or interesting?
Yeah, no, it is
Yeah.
very interesting, so you
Yeah.
go and you say, you know,
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
because you're,
I think, and I work a little bit in public school too, and I don't know, personally, I think I have more options to be more successful leading something from an independent school than from a public school. So, as hard as we, maybe sounds and all that, it's a lot harder from the other end, so.
no, I'm just like
And that's
thinking to
why I think
myself, like,
the-
if I was
yeah.
a teacher or administrator, I
Yeah.
can see how you'd be so defensive, like, oh, you coming in, you think you
Yeah.
walk in my shoes, like,
Yeah, and I think that's why the awareness of identity matters.